Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to My Hero Academia, Season 4, Episodes 17 and 18. Yeah, we're finally getting caught back up on My Hero. It's been a couple weeks. And the big reason for that is simply because all of these issues and everything with Valentine's Day and all. I just haven't been able to get to it, and just, getting to other stuff as well. So yeah, but we're back, and last we left off, we had Bakugo, um, Todoroki, Inasa, and Kami taking this extra test as part of their, well, already extra lessons. They are singled out from the rest of the group who are there and are being given this test to basically calm down a bunch of rowdy kids. These kids are, like, I guess from a local elementary school or something, and they've completely taken over. They're completely disrespectful towards their teacher and just basically out of control. So the entire goal is for these four to try and figure out a way to calm them down and get them to behave. We've seen how they've interacted with them so far. Obviously, Bakugo is not handling it well. He's handling it about as much as you would think, as well as you would think Bakugo would. Todoroki is having trouble because he's trying not to get aggressive like Bakugo, but also because he was raised in such an aggressive manner by Endeavor, he wants to not do that for other kids, and it's understandable. It's basically like any kind of situation in real life where someone is raised in an abusive household. They automatically, when they grow up, are going to want to not do that themselves. And some do fall into that trap as well. But a lot of people who are raised in abusive households oftentimes will purposefully try to not be that way, and will end up being a little too nice because of it. They won't know how to properly discipline their children, or in this case, other children like that they're caring after, because they don't want to end up like their parent. They they don't want to go down that hole, so they end up being a little too nice and a little too, just, I guess you could say, I don't know, you know what I mean. And I think that's also the issue that the teacher had, because this teacher seems extremely nice and everything, to the point where it's like, I don't think she could know how to discipline these kids, which is why they've taken over and become so unruly. Inasa, meanwhile, has the right idea. Inasa actually has the right idea with how to handle them. He's actually trying to appeal to their love of heroes. He's trying to appeal to them specifically. He's trying to connect with them. And that's actually the right way to handle this. The only issue here is that these kids are also pretty smart. And they pointed out that what Inasa had said regarding them giving their teacher a hard time and all, he was technically doing too, by making the teacher work longer for this entire thing. So it's like, wow, these kids. And then, of course, there's Kami, who we're actually seeing for the first time in the series, because remember, the Kami we saw before was actually Himiko. This is the first time in the series we're seeing the real Kami. And she's a bit of an airheaded ditz. She talks like in a very Valley Girl style, which is definitely more apparent in the English dub. but she's very much that kind of archetype, the ditzy blonde character. It's not that she's like completely out of touch or anything, but like her initial idea is taking one of the kids and like hugging him, which alone is like okay, showing like this kind of love and affection towards a kid is like okay. Like kids should be shown that kind of stuff from adults and their parents especially. But because of it, because of her outfit especially, the kid's face is kind of like pressed between her breasts, which are, on display because of her outfit. And the girls in the class start calling her like a hussy and shit. And it's like, and they start like just like whispering behind her back and shit. And it's like it's kind of hilarious. There's this one moment where it's like this one girl's like hissing at her, and it's like, what the fuck? Um, but it's fun. It's interesting. Um, and we've kind of gathered that there is this one who's kind of a leader to the pack. We even know who it is, although it doesn't seem like the four of them do. Somehow, even though it's kind of obvious. And so they've kind of talked about like, okay, their goal should be to get to the leader, because if they handle him first, it will kind of have a domino effect, they're thinking. Um, and that might be true, might not be, it's hard to say. But so it's like they're trying to figure out what to do with him, and of course Bakugo's being Bakugo, and like, oh, let's tie him up and throw rocks and have everyone else throw rocks at him. It's like, what the shit, Bakugo? Um, and and it's like I'm just wondering where this is going to go, because all four of these characters have such drastically different personalities and overall like ideas on how to handle all of this. So what are they going to do to be able to make this work? Because honestly, I do think they are going to be able to do it. I think they will be able to complete this assignment, you could call it, um, before too long. I just don't know how they're going to do it. Right now, the only thing I can think of is by like taking out the leader, basically, for lack of a better way to put it. Taking care of the leader, it's like that's the only thing I can think of, because it's like at this point, there's just so much unruliness. It's like how else are they going to handle all of this? Because there's a shit ton of kids there. Like I don't know how exactly how Japanese schooling works with a lot of their class sizes. But in America, at least here, like usually classes would be about 20 to 30 kids. And 30 kids is a big class. That is a big class here, at least from my experience. Usually the classes wouldn't be any bigger than that because obviously with more students, the less time and ability the teacher has to properly work with each one. So it's like with a smaller class size, the teacher can connect with each student and help them on a more personal basis in an easier way, which is important and necessary for teaching. And yes, there's always going to be larger classes, and there's like, of course, like a gym class is going to typically be larger, and sometimes, hell, you'll even have a gym class with just like two different grades or two different sets of students or whatnot. But it's like, this seems like a really big class. Like, there's got to be like, what, 40, 50 kids there? It seems like a really big class of students. And it's like, I've seen various anime where they go to school, and it's like, usually the class sizes look about average. Again, like 20 to 30 students, somewhere in that range. But it's like, I don't think I don't think I've ever seen it where they've been that big. And to be fair, I haven't seen a lot of anime dealing with elementary school kids being in school. There's been a few, of course, like Sweetness and Lightning. The main character's daughter is an elementary school kid, and yeah, we see her in school a couple times. Um, and various other things in that kind of ballpark, where it's like, oh, you're one of the main characters has a kid, and you occasionally see them in school. It's like, but even then, it's like it just doesn't seem like they have that big of class sizes. So I don't know. I don't know exactly why this class seems so massive. Maybe it's different in this world because of the entire quirk thing, but I don't know. Um, Either way, there's a lot of kids for them to handle. So it's like, even though there's four of them, it just seems like it's going to be a really tall order. Um, so I'm just not sure how they're going to handle it. Meanwhile, everything else at this point is kind of just taking a little breather because we just got off of a big arc with the Shia Hakaisai and Overhaul, and we haven't really started into the next one quite yet. So we're kind of like bridging the gap at the moment, I feel, which I think is it's a good way to show that by having this stuff with the provisional license re-examinations. um, I think it's a good idea to do it that way. And then after this, we're gonna probably get right into the next arc, like just a little breather room between arcs. Um, so yeah, I have no idea what's to come. I have no idea how they're going to stop this, but we're going to see, and I'm excited to see. So yeah, I know nothing about these two episodes. I haven't gotten spoiled on anything, luckily enough. Um, so I do not know where this is going to go at all. But it should be good nonetheless, because obviously My Hero Academia is a fantastic show. And we'll just see where it ends up going to. So, for the time being, we're just going to get right into this. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episodes. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so another 2 episodes of My Hero Academia down, and there's quite a bit to talk about. Even though these 2 episodes were mostly centered around again, that transitional period between arcs, there's still a lot that happens. So let's start off talking about the licensing exam retakes and how that entire thing was resolved. So as I mentioned in the pre-thoughts, Bakugo, Todoroki, Inasa, and Kami were doing the specific test in the retakes in order to calm down this class of kids that were being unruly. And I talked about like all the different things they were trying and whatnot, and wanted to see exactly where it went, wanted to see exactly how they could possibly finish that. And honestly, it was finished a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be, but I like the way that they actually did resolve it. So the kids start attacking them using their quirks, and we see that the kids have some really strong quirks that they seem to have a lot more control over than they normally would at that age. Which is kind of briefly discussed by the one dude from Shiketsu, the meat guy. I can't remember his actual name. But he like briefly discusses how quirks are like getting generally more powerful over the different generations because of, well, obviously they're gaining quirk factors from both parents and stuff. And that eventually there's the possibility of quirks becoming too powerful to where they just won't be able to be controlled at all. And we can kind of already see that happening with Eri. Her quirk is so extremely powerful that she can't control it. And especially considering it's only effective against other people, it's hard for her to even train with something like that. So we're starting to see that kind of thing come into play already. Um, so we already know that what he's saying there is completely valid. And that is kind of scary to think about. But at the same time, we've known that quirks do carry over from parents to child. A child will gain one of their parents' quirk or some kind of combination of both, usually. There are exceptions, but usually. That's how it tends to go. So it's like, yeah, if that kind of thing is happening, it is kind of like, it's almost like one for all. It just keeps building and building, and eventually the quirks like mutate and manifest in ways that become just too powerful over the different generations. So it's like, yeah, it's completely believable that that would be a concern and something that the government and hero culture in general would have to work on, and try to figure out a kind of a way around. Um, Now then we have the way, going back to the actual exam though, the way they defeat them is by using kind of their quirks against them. Todoroki freezes their quirks, using them as kind of as a frame to create this ice slide and stuff. Inasa floats them up with his wind and all. And we see Kami use her illusion powers to create like this aurora kind of thing going on, a field aesthetic basically. And Todoroki also lights these rings of ice on fire to kind of create this cool effect with the slide and everything. And it's great to see. Bakugo doesn't help with that specific part. He appeals more to the leader of the group. See, he talks to the leader and gives this advice that, honestly, seasons 1 through 3, honestly, Bakugo could not have given. I think it's fully because of his fight with Deku at the end of season 3 that Bakugo is at a point where he can give this advice and can acknowledge it for himself. He talks about, if you're constantly looking down on others, you won't be able to see your own flaws. Basically saying that you can't grow if you're constantly looking down on those around you. And this is a lesson Bakugo had to learn. At the beginning of the series, he was this hot-headed guy who has constantly his entire life been told of how amazing his quirk is. It gave him this massive ego and made him believe that he had like the best quirk, the best ability. But once he got to UA, we saw right from the beginning in season 1, he started to recognize the talent and the quirks of everyone else. We saw how he acknowledged Todoroki's quirk in the hero villain training little mini arc, I guess you would call it, when they're doing the like bomb defending thing. But you see him start to acknowledge their quirks, and you even see him start to get a little scared of it. You see it in his face that he's coming to terms with that he's not necessarily the best, and that everyone around him is impressive, even to him. And as the series goes on, he experiences that more and more. And then by the end of season 3, when he has that fight with Deku, it humbles him greatly. You could see how everything has kind of come together and everything is kind of like really hitting him. So it's wonderful to see this kind of development to where he goes from someone who thinks he's the greatest to understanding that he's not. I mean, hell, even in season 2, he even recognized others' abilities and stuff even then, like with Uraraka during the sports festival. He acknowledged how strong she was after their fight. And it's like, it's really showing how his growth continues. And yes, he's still an asshole. Yes, he's still a jerk. He says horrible things, and he continues to do so to others, telling them to die and stuff. But nonetheless, you can see how much he's grown by that one moment in the first episode here, episode 17. The fact that he was even able to say something like that to this kid, that alone proves how far he's come. He basically acknowledged his own failures. Like when he said that, he was talking about himself too. You could see it on his face. You could tell that he knew that he had been that way, that he had looked down on others for so long that it caused him to completely miss his own failures, his own problems. But that he's actually working on that now, that he's actually growing enough to be able to fix that issue with himself. And yeah, he still makes fun of and yells at others and stuff, but he's very much started to acknowledge the talents of other people. He's very much started to acknowledge their talents, their quirks, their fighting skill. I mean, to a degree, he still has that ego to him. He still thinks he's better. But he knows that these others are good. And hell, even to some degree, just as good. Like, you also see it when they're doing their ultimate move training. When he asks Deku, like, have you gotten any stronger? And Deku's like, no. And he's like, no? Aren't you supposed to be keeping up with me? And it's so much a Vegeta Goku kind of thing. Because Vegeta gets to that point where he's like, he wants Goku to be stronger. Because he wants to beat Goku, but he wants to beat him at his best. He wants Goku to be at that point where he is giving him the best fight he can. And here, it's kind of, I feel the same thing. Bakugo wants Deku to be strong. He acknowledges Deku's strength already, but he wants him to be as strong as he possibly can. He wants Deku to keep up with him, and he wants to keep up with Deku in return. Because that way, when he does get a chance to defeat Deku, it will be in a fair, valid way that will make him feel better about himself. Because if you don't think Bakugo is having some self-doubt issues, like, you haven't been paying attention. Ever since he started to recognize everyone else's talents, he's been working a lot harder to improve his own because he feels like he's falling behind. Especially with the licensing exam, with him having failed that and having to retake it. Like, he still has the ego, but at the same time, he understands that he failed and that he needs to improve on that he needs to become better. And I love Bakugo's growth. So yeah, we see them win the day and everything and help the kids. And that kind of ends that. Next thing to talk about, of course, is the not sports festival, the school festival. The school kind of pep festival, like a pep rally kind of thing. You could compare it to a pep rally because that's the kind of the point of pep rallies. But so UA is putting on a school festival, a normal school festival, like a lot of Japanese schools have. In fact, I'd say probably most, if not all. That's a thing in Japan, and you see it in all kinds of different anime. They're keeping it specifically to the school this time, and want to be able to just kind of let these other classes shine with it. While the sports festival is definitely for the hero course, the school festival is for the others, the business course, the support course, the general studies course. They get their time to shine, but the hero course still gets to take part in it. So they're trying to, they have to figure out what they're going to do for it, what their class is going to do. And Ida comes to a realization that they should not be trying to show off or anything because of how they kind of already stick out. They should be trying to give back to the other students in a way. And so in order to do that, they are trying to decide on something that would be more of like something fun, low stress, something that would just raise spirits. Um, and they go through all these different ideas, but eventually everyone kind of settles on this idea of music after it's suggested by Todoroki. And of course, that's where Kyoka comes in, being a musician and everything. And so they convince Kyoka, and they don't push it like too heavily exactly. Um, but they're trying to encourage her because she clearly has a little bit of performance anxiety, which is completely fair. Like it's mentioned in the episode that she is great at playing her instruments. She's great at even teaching her friends the instruments, but she shows this kind of anxiety when talking about actually performing it, especially in a public setting. And kind of also makes the note that other people's hobbies in the class have been able to help them with their combat abilities, such as Mina's dancing helps her be able to move in ways that allows her hero work to flourish. But she acknowledges that her own isn't quite like that, and it doesn't really help with her hero work. Um, but the others encourage her nonetheless. Kaminari and oh my gosh, I can't remember his name right now. Um, the talks to animals, Koda, that's his name. Kaminari and Koda encourage her, and although Momo tries to like get them to back down a little bit, saying like, okay, don't try to force her into this. You could tell how much that meant to her for them to compliment and encourage her so much. And so she agrees to do it. And this leads into where our opening is. Um, as I said in the reaction, people have been theorizing that the opening could be in reference to a school festival, them putting on a musical performance as part of that. And it looks like those theories were correct. And you know what? I'm all good with that. I didn't really have a theory per se. Like I didn't like knock down the theory of it being a festival. I didn't like really have any thoughts one way or the other. Um, so it's like I thought like the only thing that the opening kind of would imply is that Kyoko would have a bigger role. And we're seeing that she's going to have a notable role here. So I was kind of right in that. um, but either way, so yeah, they're going to be putting on a musical performance. Meanwhile, Mirio and Deku go see Eri. She actually requested to see them specifically. And we find that although Eri's doing a little better, she's still suffering under the influence of Overhaul. Um, and because of it, she doesn't even remember how to smile, which is really sad. It is. At the same time, Deku gets the idea to invite her to the school festival, which Mirio wholeheartedly agrees with, because it's a great idea. Because the school festival typically is like a way to improve morale and like get people to just have a good time and have some fun with it. So they're going to they asked Aizawa. Aizawa seems okay with it, and they got to ask the principal, of course. And it looks like the idea is that Mirio is going to be there with her and kind of lead her around and stuff. They even entice her with the candy apples, and it's like she's drooling over the idea of it, and that's really fucking cute. Um, but yeah, I think this is a fantastic idea because yeah, school festivals do that kind of thing. Um, that's always been that kind of thing. And here's the thing. While school festivals like that are definitely not as common here in America, I have been to schools that have had similar kinds of things. Um, I'm trying to remember what they were called. It was basically where instead of classes the entire day, like there would be these like little stations and all set outside where there would be different games and whatnot, like kind of like a festival, but like a Japanese school festival, but not quite the same. Um, Not quite like set up in the same way and everything. But that was a thing that we did have in a couple of my schools, but not all of them. Just I think just two of them. And usually it's only for like the elementary or middle schools that I've noticed. It was never in a high school. Um, but we've had that kind of thing, and that definitely is like, it's a fun day. Like going around playing these games and listening to music, just hanging out, enjoying some food. It's like those were always really fun days, but it's like obviously few and far between. So it's like I kind of understand what a Japanese school festival is like. Um, just obviously not to the exact same degree because it wasn't exactly the same as one. Um, but it's definitely something that would definitely raise Aries' overall morale and happiness. It would allow her to be able to smile. And I think that's important right now, and I think that's going to be a big deal for her. And then at the end, we kind of get our introduction to, I assume, what's going to be a focus of the next arc. So we are introduced to Gentle Criminal and La Brava. Gentle is a complete ham. He loves the spotlight, clearly, and to the point where he broadcasts all of his crimes online, with the help of La Brava, who I guess kind of acts as his, for lack of a better term, sidekick. Um, she records his crimes while he acts them out, and it's never about stuff like the money, as he puts it. He just wants the notoriety. He wants the fame. Um, and we kind of get this implication at the end that he wants to do something super big, and the implication, because it shows Aerie at this point, is that he's going to somehow be involved with all of that. That he's going to maybe attack Aerie, try to kidnap her, maybe even do something at the school festival. Um, it's definitely foreboding. Now, we didn't get to see what Gentle's quirk was, though, because he had La Brava cut off the feed before he used it. And then it cut back right after. Now, we did see what looked like this smoke emanating from him, but that's not enough information to have any kind of guess as to what his quirk could be. Um, as I said in the reaction, though, I have heard of these two. And I've seen their designs in various places. Again, I don't know the details about them, like personality, their quirks, that kind of stuff. But I have heard people talk about them, like manga readers, obviously. So I knew that they were coming at some point. I just didn't know when. But it looks like that's what we're going into next. So yeah. Also, one other thing I almost forgot to mention, Aoyama. So Aoyama starts acting weird towards Deku in this. At first, it's just like, okay, while Deku's talking, he just shoves a piece of cheese in his mouth, just completely randomly. And it's like, hell, I love cheese, but it's like, if someone did that to me, I would be like so fucking confused and thrown off. Um, but yeah, and then he leaves this foreboding message outside of Deku's window, spelled out in cheese, which is also kind of weird. And it's kind of giving off this like really foreboding, scary tone with how it's portraying these scenes. So during, excuse me, during their training, Aoyama ends up getting a stomachache because of his quirk's drawback, and Deku helps him in order to kind of get a moment for them to talk. And we find out that Aoyama has been feeling kind of connected with Deku lately. We find out that Aoyama, who has always had some self-confidence issues regarding his quirk and all, has been feeling that he and Deku have that in common, that their quirks aren't meant for their bodies, which for Deku is very much kind of true for obvious reasons. But we also find out a little more about Aoyama himself. We find out that Aoyama actually can't control his quirk that well, and that his support item, his belt, which we've known he's used, that he actually has to use, and it has to wear it pretty much at all times. Otherwise, his naval laser could accidentally leak out, which is really interesting. It's like we get this bit of development for Aoyama that kind of builds upon the development we had before. Because back a while back, I think it was season 2, we had some development for Aoyama where it was all about, like, was it season 2 or 3? Now I'm not sure. Either way, he was talking to Ida and stuff, and that's when his self-confidence issues and everything were kind of brought up, how he felt like he wasn't living up to his other classmates. Um, and now we're kind of expanding upon that by learning more about his quirk and seeing that he's been kind of connecting with Deku over the fact that their quirks don't seem right for their bodies. And we find that he's actually been trying to encourage Deku. Because of his own self-confidence issues, he's been trying to help someone else because he feels like Deku might be having those kind of self-confidence issues as well. So he's been trying to encourage him in a kind of a weird way, yes, but I mean, that's just Aoyama. But Deku realizes this and appreciates it. And in fact, not only that, he actually directly becomes friends with Aoyama. Like, Aoyama has kind of been an outsider in the class this entire time. He's had a couple good moments for sure, but he's kind of always been an outlier. He hasn't had, like, connections with everyone else. He's never really been as like strongly bonded as others have been. Like, Mina obviously gets along with everyone. That's just how Mina is. Obviously we have Deku getting along with most of them. Sue and Uraraka get along extremely well, which is why I ship the hell out of them. I mean, there's obviously more than just the fact that they get along extremely well, but still. But you get the idea. Like, all these different characters in the class have these connections, these bonds, and Aoyama really hasn't. The closest he's gotten was with Ida. But even that wasn't as much. It wasn't enough. And so now we have it to where he actually forms a legitimate bond here with Deku. And yeah, Deku, main character and everything. So yeah, of course it's going to be him, right? But still, I think that it's really nice to see this kind of continued development for Aoyama. To see him continue to grow as a character. Especially because he's the weird one. Aoyama is the weird one of the class. Let's be honest. I mean, yeah, multiple other members of the class are definitely a little weird in their own right. But Aoyama's always stuck out as that kind of weirdo who just doesn't fit in with everyone else. So to see him be developed and grown like this as a character is fantastic. It means a lot. Especially to people like myself. I grew up as the outlier, the weirdo, the lone wolf of my classes. I mean, yeah, I interacted with the other students and stuff and had a couple friends here and there. But for the most part, I stuck to myself. And whenever I said or did things, I always was worried I was, like, weirding out everyone else. That I was just being weird and unlikable and stuff. I had a lot of self-confidence issues in school. And although nowadays I've definitely gotten a lot more friends and become a lot more, I guess, socially weird, you could say, because a lot of my friends are also pretty weird, in the best way, by the way. Even though that's the case, it's like back in those days, it's like, yeah, it was hard on me. And I wanted to connect with people who I did have that in common, and there were. The few friends I did have, I had that kind of stuff in common with. Love of anime and games and stuff. Like, even back then, even back in those days, I did watch some anime. Even if I wasn't as big into it as much as I am now, but still. And I was always into games and stuff. So I would definitely connect with certain people over that. I had these friends in middle school and early high school named Cameron and Caleb. And we connected over that kind of stuff. Video games and anime and stuff, like we would always talk about stuff like Naruto and whatnot, because that was one of the big ones at that time for us. Um, but yeah, it's wild to think about. To think about that I was once in Aoyama's shoes. And nowadays you could say I'm more like Deku. I'm still kind of weird and still kind of an outlier in a lot of ways, but I've connected with people. And I've become more socially just bonded with a lot more people than I ever had been before. So it's just kind of that evolution of character that I really like seeing in this show, and especially when I can connect with it. So yeah, that's fantastic. Um, and I mean, to a degree, I guess you could say I can even connect to Bakugo's evolution of character because I used to be kind of shitty, if I'm being honest. I've talked about this before. Like I used to be extremely bigoted and stuff because it was how I was raised. But after adulthood, I started to like change myself, and obviously, it's like I can't. It's hard to be bigoted against something that you realize now that you are. Like I used to be extremely transphobic, and now I've realized I am trans. So it's like kind of hard to be transphobic when you are trans. I mean, not impossible, but usually you don't see it. um, but yeah, I used to be extremely bigoted, and I've come a long way. And I still make a lot of mistakes and have a lot of issues, but I've been definitely, definitely changed throughout life experiences and getting to know other people and stuff. So yeah, it's like there's even to a degree I could connect with that, although I was never like a violent asshole like Bakugo was. But still. Either way, these two episodes were really good. They were really good. I had a great time with them. And now that we're kind of leading into where this next arc is going, with the introduction of Gentle and Labrava, as well as the entire school festival thing being brought up, Eri continuing to be focused on as a character, which I'm so glad about. Like I mentioned, I'm really glad that they're not just leaving Eri's story at the moment, that she's continuing to be a force in the series. Um, yeah, now that we're heading into all this, though, it's like, yeah, I'm really excited to see exactly where all of this goes, and hopefully it ends up being just as good as ever. Um, so yeah, in the meantime, tell me down in the comments below what you thought of these two episodes of My Hero Academia. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.